Chapter 51, Heavy Bleeding Outside the Hospital. Fortunately Dr. Xu is here. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Xu Qiu said, but because of this, life and health are precious, and those who still stick to kindness in the face of life and death can show the brilliance of human nature. Chen Xiao felt a surge of power in her heart. She clenched her fist and said, Teacher, I will become a good doctor, just like you. Xu Qiu, can you suture? Yes, I often practice in the dormitory. You will also be on stage for my surgery tomorrow and be responsible for suture. Xu Qiu said. Chen Xiao's face was full of surprise, and she almost couldn't help hugging Xu Qiu. In the end, she still held back and said happily, I will definitely not disappoint the teacher's expectations. After more than half an hour, it was time to get off work. This day happened to be the day for salary payment. Ding ding ding. In the first hospital, the doctor's mobile phone rang one after another, and it was a text message that the salary had arrived. However, since the hospital prohibited discussing salaries, everyone only communicated with familiar people, and there was no large-scale discussion. In the emergency department office, Chen Xiao was handling a case, and when she heard the reminders in the office, she felt a little envious. She is an intern. Interns not only have to pay tuition, but also internship fees. Moreover, they work like cows and horses in the hospital, and they don't get a penny. They are doctors when they work, and students when they are paid. This is the tragic portrayal of interns. Chen Xiao pouted, this is too unfair. The office is full of experienced people. Hearing Chen Xiao's words, they laughed out loud. Wang Fan said, in the era of Director He, internships were paid, but later it was changed and the regular accompanying system was introduced, and then interns and regular trainees all became free labor. Zhou Hua smiled and said, we all went through this, just bear with it. Chen Jia said with some expectation, unless there is a tough guy who can change this inhumane system, but that is almost impossible. Every year, countless medical students pay money to work while cursing the ancestors of the person who came up with this decision thousands of times. That is why many people have turned away from the medical industry. Unless they are desperate or really have the ideal of saving the world with medicine, it is difficult for anyone to survive the 7 or 8 years from being a student to becoming an attending physician. However, Chen Xiao was not so pessimistic. She said thankfully, fortunately, I am following Teacher Xu. After that, she glanced at Xu Qiu. The next moment, she took a deep breath and was shocked by the remittance information that Xu Qiu had just clicked on. It said, remittance received, 43,216. Chen Xiao's heart stopped beating. The teacher is just a resident. This income level is not much different from the director's white income, right? After get off work, Xu Qiu changed back into casual clothes and planned to go to the bank to withdraw some money first. The first thing to do after the salary was paid was naturally to pay the 2 months of rent in arrears. The reason for withdrawing cash was that the landlord of the apartment was a bit eccentric and only accepted cash. Easy. Just then, a strange sound came into his ears. Xu Qiu looked over and found that there was a medical dispute at the security booth, and the guardrail of the security booth was cut down. The workers were reinstalling it there. Xu Qiu took a look and then retracted his gaze. After leaving the hospital gate, 2 people suddenly came towards him. Before he took a few steps, Xu Qiu stopped and recognized Shen Ning and her daughter. Dr. Xu, thank you for saving us. Shen Ning's mother cried and held Xu Qiu's hand gratefully. Shen Ning was on the side, obviously not knowing what happened, but still bowed to Xu Qiu very sensibly. Xu Qiu waved his hand and said, it's just a small effort. Try not to leave the child alone in the future. Shen Ning's mother nodded repeatedly and said, I know, thank you, I will never leave her alone again. Xu Qiu nodded and prepared to leave. Shen Ning's mother took out a stack of money from her pocket, all in small denominations, but the amount was not small. Xu Qiu hurriedly stopped him, giving me money will end my career. If you really want to thank me, just send a banner to the department. Shen Ning's mother was very fond of this. She immediately took back the money, looked around, and then said cautiously, you are not wearing a white coat, so no one should know you, right? Xu Qiu glanced at the recommended by celebrity doctors posted at the entrance of the hospital with his head portrait printed on it. He sighed, I am almost becoming a killer of female patients in Linhai First Hospital. Standing here, it's like a wanted criminal standing under a bounty order, isn't it? Obvious enough. At this time, Shen Ning's mother also noticed the poster. She was stunned for a moment and apologized repeatedly. Xu Qiu waved his hand and really wanted to leave this time. However, there was a sharp explosion suddenly from the security booth. Xu Qiu looked over subconsciously, the crowd suddenly gathered over there, and screams came from the crowd. Xu Qiu realized that something was wrong and didn't care about going home, so he rushed over. After pushing through the crowd, he finally saw the scene inside. There was a hand-grinding wheel that had stopped spinning on the ground. There were bright bloodstains on it. There was also a handful of blood on the ground. Next to the hand-grinding wheel, a worker covered his chin with both hands. His face was pale, his expression was painful, and he kept wailing. Blood oozed from his fingers, more and more, and his gray work clothes were reflected in black. Everyone around was too scared to speak. There was too much blood, and it couldn't be stopped. Xu Qiu immediately rushed up, and while judging the injury, he shouted to a big man in the crowd, "Go, call a doctor." In an emergency, it is useless to shout to the crowd, because everyone will think it has nothing to do with them. Only by appointing one person and giving him an inescapable sense of responsibility, this is the correct way to call. Scene. Xu Qiu quickly glanced at the surrounding environment. He noticed that there was a corner missing on the hand-grinding wheel. So that's it. Xu Qiu roughly guessed what happened. In this case, it is most likely that the wheel is damaged, and the high-speed rotating fragments pierced the worker's chin. Moreover, judging from the bleeding speed and amount, the injury may still be an artery, or the submental artery with a relatively large blood flow, or the mental artery. I'm a doctor. This sentence is to reassure the workers. Don't let go for a while, hold it tight. I tell you to let go, and you let go. Xu Qiu added. He was not in a hurry, and slowly covered the worker's wound with both hands. The perfect level of handheld hemostasis method quietly took effect. Let go. At this moment, Xu Qiu found the location of the fragments and also determined several bleeding points. The worker looked terrified, and he didn't dare to let go, but when he clearly felt that his neck was no longer bleeding, he tried to let go. At this moment, everyone saw that the blood that was originally gushing out suddenly stopped. The heavy blood loss was completely controlled. Papa Papa, warm applause broke out in the crowd. Someone recognized Xu Qiu and said in surprise, "It's Dr. Xu Qiu. It's printed on the doctor's recommendation at the door." I was so scared, I thought the blood was going to run out. Fortunately there was a doctor. Everyone patted their chests and felt relieved. However, just when everyone was still in shock, an accident suddenly happened in the crowd. Chapter 52, A Strange Curse, How Ugly is Human Nature. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Someone fainted, accompanied by screams. The crowd panicked again. Xu Qiu's eyes were sharp, and he quickly looked towards the source of the sound. It was Shen Ning. His face changed slightly. At this moment, Shen Ning and her daughter were only 5 or 6 meters away from him. Shen Ning, who was still jumping not long ago, stumbled a few times and was about to fall to the ground. Fortunately, Shen Ning's mother protected Shen Ning in time. Hold her here. Xu Qiu shouted immediately. At the moment, he was stopping the bleeding of the workers with his bare hands and couldn't get away. Shen Ning's mother moved faster and quickly came to the front with the weak Shen Ning. Xu Qiu made a quick judgment. A series of signs were extracted from Shen Ning: sweating all over, pale face, weak breath, no response. Xu Qiu lowered his head, put his ear to the tip of Shen Ning's nose, and listened to the girl's heartbeat again. There is no problem with the heartbeat and breathing. Several diagnoses popped up in Xu Qiu's mind: hypoglycemia, vasovagal syncope, etc. So-called vasovagal syncope means that after being stimulated, the patient's blood vessels become dysregulated. It causes peripheral blood vessels to dilate and the blood returning to the heart is reduced, and this will cause insufficient brain perfusion. In this case, the patient will suddenly lose consciousness for a short time, and even faint, but in this case, the probability of hypoglycemia is very small. Hypoglycemia coma usually has an attack process. The patient first feels dizzy and nauseous, and then the symptoms gradually worsen. If sugar and energy are not replenished in time, it may progress to coma, and Shen Ning, no matter how you look at it, is more in line with the performance of vasovagal syncope. She was scared by her grandmother before. And now, she saw someone's chin cut and blood splattered all over the floor. For an 8-year-old girl, it is not strange to witness all this and faint from fear. Get out of the way, get out of the way. At this time, the medical staff of the emergency department finally arrived. The crowd made way. Wang Fan was in the lead, followed by 3 nurses including Lu Susu, Dr. Su. Wang Fan was frowning, but when he saw that it was Xu Qiu, his brows instantly relaxed. It's Dr. Su, the patient is fine. Lu Susu and others were also relieved. The 4 came with a rescue bag, and under Xu Qiu's command, the worker's head was wrapped like a mummy, perfect pressure bandage. Xu Qiu let go. Lu Susu quickly took the wet gauze and carefully wiped the blood off Xu Qiu's palm. Xu Qiu stood up and said, "Let's go to the hospital to deal with it." The worker on the ground suddenly grabbed him. The worker took out a crumpled wad of money from his pocket, picked out a red one, put it in Xu Qiu's hand, and whispered, "Doctor, I won't go to the hospital. This is the medical fee." After that, he took out a towel from his trouser pocket, squatted on the ground, and carefully wiped the blood. Xu Qiu understood that he was worried that if he went to the hospital, his work for several days would be in vain. He sighed and stuffed the red banknote back into the worker's pocket. Then he took Shenning back to the emergency department. The crowd without the excitement slowly dispersed. Only the worker was still standing there, staring blankly at Xu Qiu's back. He held the money tightly in his hand. His nose became more and more sour. He quickly wiped his eyes, and bowed deeply to Xu Qiu. Emergency department, treatment room. On the way to the transfer, Xu Qiu sprayed some alcohol on the gauze and rubbed Shenning's nose for a while. This method really worked, and soon, the little girl woke up slowly. The hospital still pulled an electrocardiogram, and there was no abnormality. Wang Fan asked, "Do we need to do a brain CT scan to rule out brain disease? That the most common causes of fainting are brain and heart diseases?" Xu Qiu shook his head and said, "No, it's vasovagal syncope. This disease is common in school-age girls, especially those with weak constitutions. There is no need for treatment, just avoid mental stimulation on weekdays. It's nothing serious, go home early." Xu Qiu looked at Shenning's mother. Shenning's mother understood what Xu Qiu meant. If Shenning stayed here any longer, it would be dangerous. She nodded and said with determination, "Okay, my husband is gone, and it's useless to ask for ashes. I have to protect my and her baby daughter." Xu Qiu took off the leads on Shenning's body and prepared to pull down her clothes. Just then, his pupils shrank. He saw that there was a small bleeding spot in Shenning's lower abdomen. "Wait." Xu Qiu immediately put on his gloves again, took a closer look, and his eyes changed instantly. "Contact the imaging department and do an emergency CT scan immediately." In the treatment room, everyone's nerves were immediately tense again. 20 minutes later, Xu Qiu looked at the abdominal and pelvic CT scan in his hand, his expression becoming more and more solemn. The CT scan showed that in Shenning's abdominal cavity, 2 centimeters below the navel, there was a linear metal object about 3 centimeters long on the greater omentum. Xu Qiu glanced at Shenning, who was sitting next to him, eating marshmallows obediently. Shenning's mother asked anxiously, "Dr. Su, is Ninger okay?" Xu Qiu stood up and said, "Send her to the treatment room." Back to the treatment room again. After Xu Qiu finished disinfecting and laying down towels, she comforted her. "It will hurt a little for a while." Shenning lay on the bed, gritted her teeth and said forcefully, "Ninger is not afraid." Xu Qiu nodded and applied lidocaine-soaked gauze to the bleeding point for a while. Then, he inserted the needle into Shenning's lower abdomen and slowly took out the foreign body in the abdominal cavity. It was a household sewing needle. Xu Qiu picked it up and took a look, and suddenly found that there were words engraved on it. A chill ran down his spine. On the needle is written "A life for a life." There are also some weird ghost paintings, which look very evil. Xu Qiu felt a chill down her back. Shenning's mother realized something and quickly grabbed the needle to check. Her face turned pale in an instant. She came to the bedside of Shenning, who was patiently pouting his lips, and asked, "Ninger, has Grandma ever touched your belly?" Shenning said innocently, "Grandma said that she needs to have her belly checked and it's up to me to save my second dad." Disposal indoors. Hearing Shenning's childish words, everyone felt a chill that went from the soles of their feet to the sky. They never imagined that a woman could be so vicious. Even, he did not hesitate to use such evil means. He cursed his granddaughter to death just to save his son. Shenning's mother screamed and went back to the inpatient department to trouble the old lady. As for Shenning, She was temporarily placed in the emergency department office, a pretty and well-behaved little girl. She is naturally loved by the entire department. When everyone saw Shen Ning, they felt that the anger they had received from the patient was gone, and they all went over to play with him. Xiao Shen Ning, do you want to eat watermelon? I'll give you a Hello Kitty card. Wang Fan, little girl, let me test you. If a patient with a 20-year history of hepatitis B suddenly suffers from a disorder of consciousness, what are the first complications to consider? That the office was silent for a second, and then violent curses broke out. Chen Jiadao, Wang Fan, are you sick? Are you a devil? I want to stun you and cut out your liver. That everyone laughed and cursed, and the atmosphere was cheerful. Xu Qiu packed her things again and prepared to get off work again. He paused before stepping out of the emergency department. This time, there can't be any more accidents outside the hospital, right? Thinking this way, he walked out of the hospital with peace of mind. However, before he took a few steps, his steps stopped again and his entire face turned dark. Chapter 53, Last Words of the Dying Director of Obstetrics and Gynecology. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The outpatient clinic building not far away suddenly seemed like a zombie invasion. Countless family members came out in a frenzy. They stepped directly on the security inspection machine and fled outside the hospital in fear. Many of them even had blood stains on their bodies. Looking from the outside, you can still see blood stains on the ground in the outpatient hall. Xu Qiu rushed into the emergency department, changed into a white coat and shouted, "Medical trouble, prepare for rescue." 10 minutes later, Xu Qiu arrived at the scene. At this time, the medical troublemaker had been pinned down by the security guard with a steel fork. Xu Qiu glanced around and found it shocking. Bloodstains extended from the third floor to the first floor. There were bloody footprints all over the ground. The medical troublemaker stabbed anyone he saw. 4 nurses were injured to varying degrees. 1 doctor had been sent to the emergency room, and his life or death was uncertain. There are also passers-by who come to see the doctor. A 5-year-old child had his ears chopped off, an 11-year-old child's omentum was pulled out by a kitchen knife, and his intestines were spilled all over the floor. There were 4 other adults who were also seriously injured. Damn it, beat him to death, Chow's motherfucker, you're going to kill all the children, they're not human beings. Kill this murderer and strangle him to death. All around, people's eyes were red, they were furious, and they wanted to crush the doctor to ashes. The security guard's face was also distorted with anger. He pressed the steel fork tightly, trying to crush the medical troublemaker's neck directly. However, he finally saved some strength, and he and other security guards stepped forward and completely subdued the medical troublemaker. At this time, boom! Suddenly, there was a noise from the stairs, a bloody palm slapped on the door, and then a doctor with disheveled hair walked out shuffling. Her face was pale and there was blood all over her body. The other hand was pressed firmly against his chest, but blood still couldn't stop gushing out from between his fingers. Everyone's expressions changed. Heart. She was stabbed in the heart. The medical troublemaker struggled and laughed. Quack doctor, you quack doctor, even if my horse dies, I will hold you back. Pay for me and Ma Zi with your life. That a security guard couldn't hold it back and punched him. He shut up on the spot. Xu Qiu quickly rushed forward and supported the female doctor. The director of the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology is Kong Huixia. Xu Qiu still remained extremely calm. He grabbed the iodophore handed over by the nurse and washed his hands directly, and on the other side. Kong Huixia only felt that her eyes were getting darker and darker. Her mind went blank. At this moment, she regretted choosing to be a doctor. She was also a wife and a mother, but she died so dramatically at the hands of a man who also loved his wife. At this time, the other doctors also gathered around. Among them was the director of thoracic surgery. He had already put on sterile gloves and quickly searched for Kong Huixia's blood vessels, want to press on the aorta to try to stop the bleeding. Cardiac trauma, that's his area. Kong Huixia's lips were pale and she said with difficulty, Director Zheng, 3 cuts, the right heart near the pulmonary artery, the right lung, and the left side of the heart. The blood loss is more than 2,000 milliliters. Upon hearing this, the faces of the doctors present turned pale at the same time. With such severe injuries and huge amounts of bleeding, life is counted in seconds. If you want to save. I'm afraid only Director Zheng from the Department of Thoracic Surgery has this ability. At this time, Director Zheng, who was performing first aid, began to tremble. He knelt on the ground, cold sweat broke out on his forehead, and his face became paler. The bleeding can't stop. Director Zheng stared with despair on his face. He pressed hard to stop the bleeding, find various theoretical pressure hemostasis, but she could only feel that Kong Huixia's blood spurted out from the wound in her chest with her heartbeat. At the moment, all he could do was to delay the bleeding, and then watch his colleagues die in the hospital she had dedicated to for more than 30 years. No one can save me. However, at this moment of despair, Xu Qiu suddenly rushed out and came to Kong Huixia. In his hand he held a scalpel. At this time, Kong Huixia's consciousness became weaker and weaker. She weakly pulled the corner of her mouth a few times and said, Xu Qiu, it's useless, help me tell my husband and son that I love them. Xu Qiu ignored it and said, Director Zheng, prepare to let go. After all, the knife in his hand suddenly fell, and a cut of about 6 centimeters was made along the chest. Wow! The next moment, a large amount of blood accumulated in the chest sputtered out. Director Zheng's face changed drastically. What are you going to do? A word came to his mind. Stop bleeding with bare hands. But, how could such violent and rapid bleeding be stopped with bare hands? Opening the chest will only make Kong Huixia die faster. However, Xu Qiu ignored him. Next moment, in the horrified eyes of everyone, Xu Qiu's left hand penetrated Kong Huixia's chest wound. Bang bang bang. Bang bang. The heart was beating in the chest, but the beating amplitude was getting weaker and weaker. At the moment when the pulse was at its weakest, Xu Qiu gave it a gentle squeeze. The strong finger bones were like a bandage, constricting Kong Huixia's heart. Next moment, the bleeding like a flood suddenly stopped. Director Zheng's saliva flew out, and words of reprimand came to his lips. Seeing this scene, he stared at the wound with his eyes wide open, and said woodenly, Has the bleeding stopped? The other doctors also looked as if they had seen a ghost. Stopped. Such a terrifying bleeding speed, such a tricky wound, can the bleeding be stopped by hand? Why are you still standing there? Hurry up and operate. Xu Qiu said calmly while wiping the blood on his white coat. At this time, everyone woke up and immediately pushed a flat bed and carried Kong Huixia to the operating room. At the same time, calls were made to various departments of the hospital. Soon after, the whole hospital was boiling. The director's accident was a huge loss for the hospital and even the entire provincial medical system. As soon as the news was heard, all the relevant departments sent out their most capable doctors. The anesthesia department, the chief anesthesia director was dispatched. In the ICU, Director Jiang also came from home. The directors of the emergency department, respiratory department, etc. were all ready to carry out joint operations. At the same time, a green channel for surgery was opened. Various rescue equipment was dispatched at the first time. For example, the extracorporeal circulation machine, that is, an artificial heart. This thing can maintain blood circulation in the case of cardiac arrest and gain a certain amount of operating time. It is an essential instrument for large-scale thoracic surgery. It is the core. In addition, various examinations such as echocardiography and pericardial puncture are also ready. On the way to the operating room, Director Zheng hurriedly issued orders, saying, Maintain ventilation and ensure the frequency. Closely monitor arterial pressure and central venous pressure. Contact the blood bank quickly and prepare at least 3,000 or 4,000 milliliters of blood. Instructions were issued one after another. Director Zheng looked at Kong Huixia on the bed, and the next moment, his heart tightened. Chapter 54 In despair, only Xu Qiu can help. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On the hospital bed, Kong Huixia was already unconscious, cold sweat, pale, thin pulse. A large number of typical indications point to a dangerous emergency, hemorrhagic shock. Director Zheng immediately said, Speed up the infusion speed, don't worry about whether your body can tolerate it. The nurse quickly increased the speed. Director Zheng closed his eyes silently, feeling that he had a narrow escape from death. When she was pushed onto the operating table, Kong Huixia's detailed diagnosis also came out: traumatic shock, traumatic cardiac tamponade, there was a skin contusion on the left chest and a penetrating injury to the right lung, there is also left hemopneumothorax, etc. The equipment nurse reported Kong Huixia's arterial blood gas analysis results. Na plus 136 mol/L, Ca2 plus 1.23 mol/L, K plus 5.4 mol/L, HCT 47%, pH 7.170, Hb 153 G/L, PaCO 235 mm of mercury, Pau 251 mm of mercury, B 12 mol/L, Sa 279%. At this time, the anesthesia director had formulated the minimum dose and safest anesthesia induction plan based on Kong Huixia's condition. Dexamethasone 10 mg. Midazolam 2 mg. Rocuronium 50 mg, etomidate 12 mg, fentanyl 0.1 mg quickly induce intubation. Soon, tracheal intubation was completed, and Kong Huixia's breathing was completely taken over by the ventilator. Immediately afterwards, the anesthesia director gave 500 mg of phenylephrine, 20 mg of ephedrine, and 80 mg of epinephrine in batches according to the values on the monitor. Finally, when everything was ready, Director Zheng gave the order, the operation begins. With the support of autologous blood transfusion, extracorporeal circulation support and other technologies, the heart rupture repair surgery began without stopping the heart. As Director of Thoracic Surgery, Director Zheng naturally assumes the responsibility of the chief surgeon. 5 minutes later, Director Zheng continued to extend the incision made by Xu Qiu. A midline chest incision was made, the 4 chambers of the heart, as well as the ascending aorta, pulmonary artery, etc. are perfectly exposed. At this time, everyone saw the shape of Xu Qiu's palm. Everyone was stunned. Xu Qiu's 5 fingers twisted and pressed on Kong Huixia's heart in a strange manner. They blocked the pulmonary artery, left pericardium, left heart and various small bleeding ports respectively. Director Zheng also showed a look of astonishment. Is this really something that humans can accomplish to stop bleeding? He forced himself to calm down and said, Dr. Su, the rest depends on our cooperation. He planned to let Xu Qiu let go, hold the ruptured heart by himself, and then start suturing. Director Zheng, let it go. The moment Xu Qiu released a finger, Director Zheng immediately pressed it, but the next moment, his expression became extremely ugly. He could feel the blood dripping out from between his fingers, turning the field of surgery red again in the blink of an eye. How can it be so difficult? Director Zheng was confused. Only now did he realize how exquisite Xu Qiu's compressions were. He couldn't even stop a rupture. I come. Xu Qiu gently opened Director Zheng's fingers and covered them again. The blood stopped again. Seeing this scene, all the doctors in the operating room fell silent. They looked at Xu Qiu blankly. Director Zheng collapsed a little and said, There's no way to sew it. That when sewing, you must hold it down by yourself and use both hands to sew together. If one person stops the bleeding and another person sutures, blocking the stitching angle is one thing, and the cooperation cannot be tacit. In this case, the blood loss will be even greater. On the other side, the director of anesthesia reminded with a stern face, Hurry, it will take 1 hour at most, there is no time for you to hesitate. All the values on the life monitor are not good. Basically, he was forced to undergo surgery on the verge of death. This is no longer robbing someone on the line between life and death. He rushed directly into the palace of the King of Hell and forcibly tampered with the Book of Life and Death in front of the King of Hell. The atmosphere in the operating room was extremely solemn. Director Zheng looked ugly. There is only 1 incision on the heart, and the operation may take up to 2 hours, and now, on Kong Huixia's heart, there are 3 spots visible to the naked eye. How could it be done in 1 hour? Not to mention Director Zheng, it wouldn't work if he were replaced by a nationally renowned cardiothoracic surgeon. At this moment, a voice fell into everyone's ears. Xu Qiu said, Director Zheng, let me do it. You coming? Are you kidding me? Xu Qiu moved his right hand. In my mind, masterclass heart rupture repair surgery is particularly dazzling. Director Zheng, if you delay any longer, Director Kong will be in danger. Xu Qiu stretched out her hand with a calm look. Director Zheng was stunned for a moment, and was actually frightened by Xu Qiu. At this time, the director of respiratory surgery beside the operating table shouted, Old Zheng, give it to him, he might be able to do it. That esophagotracheal fistula surgery. Xu Qiu's legacy was truly magnificent. The skill of the surgery is so shocking. So much so that at this desperate moment, the director of respiratory surgery subconsciously placed his hope in him. While Director Zheng was stunned, the needle was already in Xu Qiu's hand. His aura changed instantly. The operating room seemed to be Xu Qiu's battlefield. He pressed with his left hand specifically to free up his right hand for this moment. Ding! The needle made a slight sound. In an instant, it flew through Xu Qiu's hands. Before everyone could react, the 3-0 non-invasive suture with a pad had already passed through the laceration. 1 stitch, 2 stitches. 3 stitches. In a few seconds, the needle seemed to have pressed the fast-forward button in Xu Qiu's hand. The moment it stopped, on the beating heart, there were already traces of full-thickness mattress sutures of the myocardium. After doing all this, Xu Qiu's fingertips moved down, exposing the upper end of the laceration. Director Zheng immediately came to his senses and quickly became an assistant. Stepping forward to tie the knot, at this time, he noticed that as he finished tying the knot, the laceration was healed tightly, without any cavity or tension. What a perfect mattress suture! Director Zheng couldn't help but say. All the directors were also dumbfounded. Is it done? It took me only a blink of an eye. Too fast. Is this the rumored Dr. Su? That everyone was completely impressed. No one questioned whether Xu Qiu was capable of completing this operation. As the operation progressed, everyone discovered that Kong Huaxia's heart rupture was more serious than they had imagined. In addition to what was mentioned before, there were 2 ruptures from Kong Huaxia's superior vena cava to the right atrium, and blood was seen gushing out. There were also scattered punctate bleeding spots on the surface of the right ventricle, and all of these were pressed down by Xu Qiu's bare hands. During the operation, Xu Qiu let go, revealing a hemostasis point, which shocked everyone. Once the rapid completion of the suture was an even greater shock. Deep suture of the coronary artery, temporary closure of the non-invasive vascular clamp, suture repair of the left atrial appendage. Different suture techniques were used freely by Xu Qiu. Finally, in the 40th minute of the operation, all bleeding holes were sutured. Xu Qiu pulled his left hand out of the chest cavity, only to feel his fingers sore and almost completely stiff. Check. Xu Qiu said calmly. Director Zheng quickly checked the heart ultrasound. However, the results of the examination shocked everyone. Chapter 55. Dr. Xu Qiu, you are my god. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The amount of fluid in the pericardial cavity increases again. This means that there are hidden bleeding points in Kong Huaxia's heart cavity. At this time, the life monitor alarmed again and the patient's blood pressure began to drop. Xu Qiu made a decision immediately. Continue to infuse the red blood cell suspension. Replenish 400 milliliters of plasma. Fastest. The assistant took a sharp breath, connected the blood bag, and squeezed the blood bag with both hands. At this time, this is the only way to increase the speed of fluid replenishment again. Xu Qiu continued. 800 milliliters of colloid crystal 500 milliliters. While giving the order, Xu Qiu picked up the scalpel again and slashed, and a large amount of blood poured out with coagulated blood clots. There is also a large amount of gray-red myocardium in the ventricular wall below. This is necrotic myocardium. Without saying a word, Xu Qiu quickly started construction, already calculating the area of the myocardial defect in the process. 21 mm*, 16 mm polyester patch. Director Zheng thought the assistant was too slow, so I personally built it to a corresponding size and quickly covered it over the defect. The next moment, everyone's breath froze, feeling unbelievable. Just right. Xu Qiu judged such a precise size without even using a ruler. The other side, the moment the polyester patch fell, Xu Qiu also placed the needle with 3-0 non-invasive sutures. He quickly completed several simple mattress sutures along the edge of the wound. The peripheral sutures are patched with a small spacer. Click. After finishing the last stitch, Xu Qiu cuts the suture, then the little finger hooked back, and then gently picked and pinched, and the perfect knot fell on the polyester patch. After doing this, Xu Qiu put down the equipment and then held his heart with one hand. Director Zheng turned pale with fright. What are you doing? Xu Qiu said calmly, check for bleeding. Director Zheng stared with disbelief on his face. How is bleeding checked? Xu Qiu didn't answer. In the surgeon's position, he slowly closed his eyes and carefully felt the beating of his heart in his palm. Blood rushes and crashes in the veins. as the heart relaxes and contracts, the mitral valve and tricuspid valve continuously eject blood flow and hit the ventricular wall. His perfect hand-to-hand hemostasis method turned his palm into a humanoid bleeding detector. Bang bang, bang bang. No murmurs such as valvular disease or blood leakage, this is a rhythmic and regular heartbeat. A few seconds later, Xu Qiu opened his eyes, and his voice sounded. Continue blood transfusion and give methylprednisolone, sodium bicarbonate, mannitol, and furosemide. These are to correct acid-base balance and electrolyte imbalance, perform brain protection. At this time Xu Qiu looked at the life monitor again. Kong Huixia's blood pressure is gradually rising, and finally stabilized at around Hg. Although he is still on the verge of danger, his life is no longer in danger. 5 minutes later, repeat cardiac ultrasound. Everyone held their breath and felt uneasy. If there is still fluid accumulation and bleeding this time, then this operation will fail. The god of death will not give Kong Huixia a third chance. Finally, the cardiac ultrasound scan showed that there was no blood accumulation in the pericardial cavity. It's done. People were pleasantly surprised. Director Zheng and others were also very excited. Xu Qiu, however, remained calm, quickly placed a chest drainage tube, and then sutured the chest layer by layer. The operation is complete. Xu Qiu's words fell. Everyone looked at the surgery time at the same time. 41 minutes. At this moment, everyone's eyes were filled with shock. Such a complicated heart rupture was completed in 41 minutes. The estimated operation time is about 3.5 hours. What the hell is 41 minutes? It's like cheating. Does Dr. Su really not consider transferring to another department? With this skill, he can become a director outside of the hospital. I'm so excited when you say this. We also welcome Dr. Su to be the director of the Department of Respiratory Surgery. Brain surgery is also. After the operation, the record sheet was sent to Xu Qiu. As the real chief surgeon, Xu Qiu naturally has the right to sign for this operation. He glanced at it and was suddenly shocked. It records the rehydration situation during Kong Huixia's surgery. Red blood cell suspension 8.5 U, plasma 2 150 milliliters, autologous blood 250 milliliters, colloid 2 500 milliliters, crystalloid 15 0 milliliters, cumulative rehydration, cumulative bleeding 4000 milliliters, urine output 300 milliliters. The blood volume of an adult is only about 4,500 milliliters. In this operation, the total amount of fluid replenishment was more than twice Kong Huixia's blood volume. This alone is enough to show how dangerous this operation is. At this time, there were many doctors and nurses waiting anxiously outside the operating channel. Among them are obstetricians and gynecologists such as Li Shui. There were also many patients who had been cured by Kong Huixia who came after hearing the news. Kong Huixia is the old director of the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology. She has single-handedly led many doctors and nurses in the department. Her surgical skills are also excellent. Many difficult patients who were refused treatment by other hospitals received a new lease of life under Kong Huixia's surgery. Therefore, whether in the hospital or among patients, Kong Huixia has a very good reputation. When they heard that she was in trouble, some patients who had undergone surgery 10 years ago even came specially. Squeak dash dash at this time, the door of the operating room was pushed open. Everyone's heart suddenly twitched, and they immediately looked towards the entrance of the passage nervously. When they found the smiles on the faces of the surgeons, Li Shui and others immediately became excited. Director Zheng, the operation was successful. Someone rushed forward excitedly. Director Zheng dodged, raised his chin towards Xu Qiu, and said, "Didn't you see that the one standing in the C position is Dr. Su?" Dr. Su. Li Shui shouted excitedly. Kong Huixia is her teaching teacher. From an intern to the current attending physician with some achievements, Kong Huixia has always led the way. Therefore, Kong Huixia's position in Li Shui's heart is no less than that of a second mother. Li Shui didn't know where the courage came from, and suddenly grabbed Xu Qiu's hand tightly. "Dr. Su, you are my god." She held Xu Qiu's hand, tears flowing down like they were free. Xu Qiu let Li Shui hold his hand, but his eyes swept across the dense crowd. Doctors, nurses, and patients all looked at him with gratitude at this moment. Xu Qiu smiled faintly. too many doctors and nurses just treat the patients on the operating table as cold flesh and blood, as a body to be repaired, removed, or transplanted. However, after experiencing this incident, doctors should be able to better understand the feelings of the patient's families waiting outside the operating room. After the operation, Xu Qiu left the cardiothoracic surgery department surrounded by the crowd. On the way, the system's operation settlement came. Seeing the content of the reward, Xu Qiu suddenly became energetic. The system actually unlocked a new function. Chapter 56. Saving lives is easy, but restoring trust between doctors and patients is difficult. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ding! Congratulations on completing a heart rupture repair. Rating, A+, the steps such as opening the chest were completed by others. Experience plus 35. Congratulations on completing 20 draws and unlocking new features. *1. The draw prize pool has been upgraded. Distance to next draw, 5 out of 200. Xu Qiu secretly said, "Good guy." The prize pool has indeed been upgraded. The price of this lottery has been increased to 200 experience points each time. However, he is more concerned about the new features. Xu Qiu quickly opened the system to check. I saw that after every operation I mastered, there was a small ellipsis. Click on the ellipses. Master level bone reconstruction technique, ranked first in Linhai First Hospital, first in Linhai City, first in Baiyun Province, 7th in Daxia Kingdom, and 213th globally. Master level heart rupture repair. Linhai No. 1 Hospital ranks 1, Linhai City ranks 3, Baiyun Province ranks 17, Daxia Kingdom ranks 149. Global ranking, 1000 plus. Xu Qiu was surprised. It's actually a ranking system. Although I don't know how the system quantifies medical skills, however, this ranking is still relatively authoritative, such as bone reconstruction surgery. This surgery is extremely difficult, and there are very few doctors who can do it. In addition, it is mainly researched by foreign doctors, and it has only started in China in recent years. Therefore, he can rank at the top of the province and even the country. Globally, it falls outside the 200th place, and the same master level repair of heart rupture. Cardiac surgeries are being carried out in various hospitals. There are many doctors who can do this, and with the huge base, many talented people will naturally stand out. Therefore, neither the national ranking nor the global ranking is outstanding. It seems that we have to put surgical practice on the schedule. After withdrawing her thoughts, Xu Qiu came to the outpatient department again. The blood stains have been cleaned up by this time. It is impossible to tell that an indiscriminate murder occurred here more than an hour ago. However, the clinic building seemed deserted at the moment. A large number of police officers stood outside the courtyard. There are also many journalists interviewing the director of the hospital's publicity department. Suddenly, a reporter saw Xu Qiu and others. "Have you finished the operation? Quick, go to the interview." Surrounded by a group of doctors, nurses and patients, it was difficult for Xu Qiu not to be noticed. Therefore, in the blink of an eye, reporters swarmed in and surrounded the place. Is Director Kong's operation successful? Is Director Kong out of danger? One by one, the microphones were blocked in the mouth of the white-haired Director Zheng. After all, although Xu Qiu is in the middle, he looks like a newcomer coming to the surgery. No one would associate him with a surgeon. Director Zheng said hoarsely, "It's not me, it's not me, it's Dr. Xu Qiu next to me." Reporters were stunned. Some of those who reacted quickly pointed their cameras at Xu Qiu. "Dr. Xu, is Director Kong out of danger?" Facing the camera, Xu Qiu's expression did not change much and said calmly, "The operation was successful and he has been transferred to the ICU." The crowd suddenly burst into applause. At this time, another reporter asked, "Dr. Xu, what do you think of this medical incident that has had a huge social impact?" Hearing this question, Xu Qiu's eyes flashed with sadness. He raised his head, looked at the camera and said, "A knife cuts open the heart, and it is not difficult to repair it. However, it is not easy to restore the trust between doctors and patients after it has broken people's hearts." These words have touched everyone's heart. The crowd immediately became excited. The crowd was excited and people came up to speak. Well said. It is recommended that the murderer be severely punished. This is not a medical incident, this is deliberate murder and indiscriminate killing. Director Kong is a good doctor. He saved my life 10 years ago. That murderer must be sentenced to death. Midway through the interview, Xu Qiu blended into the crowd and quietly slipped back to the emergency department office. Dr. Su, thank you for saving Director Kong. I watched the live broadcast, Dr. Su, what you said was great. Applause. Dr. Su's approach is so great, I admire him so much. In the office, everyone was also excited and expressed their respect to Xu Qiu. Xu Qiu walked in calmly. At this time, little Shenning was still sitting in a chair in a daze, like an exquisite doll. It is incompatible with the excitement around it. She heard the sound and came to her senses, still a little confused, but the moment she turned around and saw Xu Qiu, her eyes slowly lit up and a sweet smile appeared on her face. Big brother is back. Shenning jumped off the chair, her expression visibly happy. Xu Qiu rubbed her flesh and asked, no one else will bother Xiao Ning, right? Don't worry, the old woman isn't here. We won't let her in. Xu Qiu felt relieved. The one he was wary of was the old man. Returning to his desk, Xu Qiu discovered that there was already a warm lunchbox on top. Lu Susu leaned against the door and said considerately, Dr. Su, you probably haven't eaten yet, so I made an extra portion so that you can eat some after the operation. The beautiful female Dr. Chen Jia also came over with a lunch box and said with concern, I left a chicken leg for you. The lunch box has been washed and is very clean. Yes, I also prepared it, and I also wanted little Shenning to eat it, but she kept saying that she was not hungry. Dr. Su, please persuade her to eat something. In the blink of an eye, a set of simplified Manchu and Han banquets was gathered on Xu Qiu's table. Wang Fan swallowed his saliva and came over. I didn't bring anything, but I brought a mouth, okay? The female doctors were immediately unhappy, thinking why didn't you bring it, you obviously brought several faces. But Xu Qiu said indifferently, let's eat together, I can't finish it. After that, he divided another lunch box and handed it to Shenning. The little girl looked at it eagerly, and she subconsciously wanted to shake her head. Xu Qiu's voice interrupted her and said, eat, you are hungry. The fragrance drifted away, and Shenning's stomach cried twice. Wang Fan ran over and filled Shenning's lunchbox with dishes, saying, eat it. I'm shameless enough to eat your doctor brother's food. I'd be embarrassed if you don't eat it. Shenning was amused, and she looked at Xu Qiu again. After confirming that Xu Qiu really gave her food, Shenning picked up the chopsticks, lowered her head, and gently picked up the rice in the box. This meal reminded Shenning of many things. For example, 4 or 5 years ago, her parents were still doing research abroad. She lived alone at her grandmother's house. Grandma's family was not short of money, and her parents would send back 20,000 yuan of living expenses every month, but Shenning still couldn't eat meat once a month. Once she was so aggrieved that she called her parents. She was tongue-tied and only knew to say I want to eat chicken legs. After her grandmother found out, she bought more than 20 chicken legs, put them in boiling water without any seasoning and boiled them in plain water, forcing Shenning to eat. That night, she was forced to eat several times more chicken legs than she ate. They were fishy and unpalatable. Since then, she has never complained again. At this moment, looking at the sumptuous dinner in front of her, the brothers and sisters around her joked with each other. The most handsome brother picked up food for her from time to time. There was also an ordinary-looking uncle next to her who talked about the funny patients he met in the hospital. At this moment, Shenning's nose became more and more sour, and her vision was gradually blurred by mist. After dinner, Xu Qiu called the obstetrics and gynecology department. There is still an important thing that has not been dealt with. Chapter 57. She won't live for many days. Waiting to die is her fate. You are listening at novelfull.audio. He has always been obsessed with the murderer's words, a life for a life. The chance that Director Kong killed the patient was very small, but Xu Qiu still wanted to know the truth. The person who answered the phone was Li Shui. After explaining the purpose of his visit, Li Shui said, Dr. Su, why don't you come to the obstetrics and gynecology department and see for yourself? Xu Qiu wondered, is the patient's body still there? Li Shui sighed, what corpse? That man's girlfriend is not dead yet. Xu Qiu hung up the phone and rushed to the obstetrics and gynecology department. On the way, I met Li Shui, who came to greet her. Li Shui introduced the situation and said, the perpetrator and the patient became pregnant out of wedlock. What's even worse is that the patient himself has heart failure and severe gestational hypertension. We have sternly warned that the patient's condition is not suitable for pregnancy, otherwise both the big and small may die, but the family didn't listen and still let the patient get pregnant. The fetus was brought to the hospital a few days ago. The fetus has developed to 21 weeks. Upon examination, the pregnant woman's blood pressure has reached about 200/130 mmHg, and her heart failure is getting worse. Xu Qiu's brows furrowed. A systolic blood pressure of over 180 is the highest level of hypertension. If a pregnant woman reaches 200, she may die from various complications of hypertension in minutes. In this case, it is also accompanied by heart failure. If the pregnancy continues, it is 100% fatal. Li Shui said. Later, the family members said that the baby could be born prematurely at 21 weeks and asked us to perform an autopsy as soon as possible. How is this possible? In the medical world, the most extreme premature baby is 21 weeks, and that was the one that was accidentally saved after countless failed cases in top foreign hospitals. No reference whatsoever. It's like winning the lottery, we have repeatedly explained. Clinically, it takes at least 26 weeks to have a chance of survival, but the family members didn't listen. The patient's physical condition makes it impossible to transfer him to another hospital, otherwise he may die on the road at any time, so we explained the risks and the situation of stillbirth, and repeatedly emphasized that the chance of survival was very small, and performed an induction operation. Later it was discovered that it was indeed a stillbirth. He didn't even have a chance to be rescued and died directly in his stomach. Then the family members started to make trouble. Didn't the guardrails at the security booth of our hospital be chopped up by medical troublemakers? It was the patient's mother who cut it. She was carrying a knife openly, so she was stopped by the security guard. What followed was that the patient's boyfriend brought a knife in a bag and stabbed the patient. After listening, Xu Qiu was a little surprised. The whole family is really evil. At that time, when the doctor yelled "Kill me, Ma Zi," I thought he was a crazy and infatuated person. Thinking about it now, it was completely wrong. If you really feel sorry for your woman, would you let her take great risks to have a child? To be honest, what made the doctor lose his mind was the underdeveloped fetus. Soon after, the two rushed to the obstetrics and gynecology department. Xu Qiu also saw the woman on the hospital bed. She is very short, looking over 1.5 meters tall, the complexion is withered and yellow, the eye sockets were sunken, and the empty pupils were tinged with gray. There were clumps of knots in his hair, and his whole body was extremely thin. She was wearing a respirator, her lips were chapped, and she kept making a cough-like sound from her throat. Although her body function is at the lowest point in her life, her body has an amazing will to survive, like a person falling off a cliff, holding on to the edge of the cliff with one hand. Xu Qiu was moved by this power. Li Shui said with some sadness, "Oh, she is also a poor person. In her condition, if she does not go to the ICU, she will not survive for a few days." But after the stillbirth, the family immediately became cold-hearted and went back without caring about anything. When he comes back, he already has a knife. Xu Qiu looked through the woman's medical records carefully. Miao Yu, 19 years old, in addition to the diseases mentioned previously, she also had difficulty breathing, coughing, and hemoptysis. After being admitted to the hospital, she suffered from recurring lung infections in the past few days. There are also symptoms of congestive heart failure such as shortness of breath, fatigue, and lower limb edema. Overall, there is nothing wrong with the diagnosis made by the obstetrics and gynecology department. 1. Severe pregnancy-induced hypertension. 2. Heart failure. 3. Streptococcus pneumoniae. Li Shui waited for Xu Qiu to see it before saying, her current situation is not optimistic. First, her hospital account already owed more than 10,000 yuan. Second, what her family members just did. In addition to these, her heart failure continued to worsen after the pregnancy was terminated. And the lung infection cannot be controlled no matter what. I'm afraid, I won't live for a few more days. Li Shui was very puzzled. Xu Qiu was also a little confused. This type of pregnancy causes aggravated heart failure. usually because the fetus increases the physical burden on the pregnant woman. After the fetus is extracted, the heart failure should be relieved. At this moment, patient Miao Yu's heart failure was deteriorating rapidly. What was the reason? Xu Qiu scanned the patient's chest X-ray with a responsible attitude. Wait a minute, why is this right lung smaller? Xu Qiu wondered. Li Shui explained, the lung infection is too serious, and she still has a little atelectasis. Xu Qiu nodded, quite reasonable. Well, maybe this is life. Li Shui shook her head. Xu Qiu also collected the cases and prepared to go back. Before leaving, he looked back and found that Miao Yu had turned her head and was staring at him. The gray eyes were filled with a desire to live. Xu Qiu whispered, try to contact her parents. Li Shui said, I heard that she escaped from her adoptive parents and got together with this man she fell in love with online after she found out she was adopted. After all, they are parents. It was already past 9 o'clock in the evening when he returned to the emergency department. Xu Qiu simply gave up going home. He asked for a set of cardiology instruments from the surgery management department, found an empty operating room, and began to practice surgery. The nurses on the night shift passed by the operating room from time to time. Hey, it's Dr. Su again. I often see him practicing in the operating room, so hardworking. No wonder Dr. Su's surgery is so amazing, it's all the result of hard training every night. Dr. Su is really awesome at night. Quick, let's go buy some supper. I wonder what Dr. Su likes to eat. Oysters? Or roasted wolfberries? The nurses laughed as they talked, occasionally taking out their phones to take a photo with Xu Qiu's back through the glass. At this moment, in the operating room, Xu Qiu was completely immersed in boring practice. He simulated the process of heart rupture repair in his mind. The operation began, heart compression while emergency thoracotomy, open the pericardium, emergency treatment of sudden ventricular fibrillation. After quickly cleaning the blood clot, a large amount of blood suddenly gushed out from the bottom of the heart. Xu Qiu instinctively flashed a response plan in his mind, quickly blocked the ascending aorta, and at the same time, perfused the aorta with cardioplegia fluid to make the heart stop softly. All the accidents during the operation were staged in front of Xu Qiu one after another. Then, he took measures within a few seconds and saved the patient. Half an hour later, the heart rupture repair technique that included all rescue methods was completed. When Xu Qiu raised his head from the shadowless lamp, a surprising voice sounded in his ears. Chapter 58 Rare Disease, Scimitar Syndrome. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ding! You have completed an exercise. Heart rupture repair proficiency plus 0.5%. Your ranking has been updated. Master level heart rupture repair, Linhai No. 1 Hospital ranks 1, Linhai City ranks 3, Baiyun Province ranks 16, Daxia Kingdom ranks 132, global ranking, 1000 plus. Xu Qiu was a little surprised. Unexpectedly, just a 0.5% improvement in proficiency increased his provincial ranking by 3, and his national ranking by more than a dozen places. Based on this calculation, it only takes 200 times for him to improve this surgery to a perfect level. Only, the surgical practice seemed to take just over half an hour. However, going through the entire process requires simulating various unexpected surgical accidents. It consumes a lot of energy. Even, no less than completing a real surgery. Let's practice something else. Xu Qiu changed the set of instruments and began to practice simple suturing. Soon, the time came to midnight the next day. Ding, you get daily task *1. Xu Qiu paused, his eyes shining. You even unlocked daily tasks. He quickly checked, daily tasks, simple, complete the diagnosis of 50 patients. Optional, general, the cumulative stitching length on the day reaches 1 meter. Optional, difficulty, complete a 4-level surgery. Optional. Xu Qiu analyzed it. For simple tasks, his number of outpatient visits in half a day is at least 60 or 70, it's really not difficult. General tasks are a little bit abnormal. For example, in a cesarean section with a large incision, the wound is only about 10-15 centimeters. If he accepts this task, it means that he has to perform at least a dozen surgeries and perform all the sutures before he can get the total length of 1 meter, certainly. He can also choose to go to the treatment room, which specializes in various sutures, for example, classmates fight, father and son fight, husband and wife fight, and mesangial tears occur when young lovers fight with no clothes on. However, these are basically the jobs of residents and interns. He is a resident doctor, but he is overkill when he goes there. Waiting for a level 4 surgery. Xu Qiu retracted her thoughts and planned to receive the task later. Sign in first. Xu Qiu clicked to sign in. Ding! Congratulations on completing your sign-in at Linhai No. 1 Hospital. Your impact factor is 5.9, and the rewards are moderately increased. Reward richness * 5.9. You get, Master-level cardiac artificial blood vessel implantation. Xu Qiu was pleasantly surprised, another level 4 cardiothoracic surgery. The application scope of cardiac artificial blood vessel implantation is very wide: vascular stenosis, vascular calcification, arteriovenous malformations, abnormal shunts, etc. are all surgical indications for artificial blood vessel implantation. A little more sharp, it also comes in handy for heart transplants, lung transplants, etc. As the master-level knowledge was completely absorbed by Xu Qiu, he gained a lot of relevant surgical experience and insights in an instant. Muscles are also remodeling, mechanical memory is being built, it has completely transformed into a shape suitable for master's artificial blood vessel implantation. Aortic stenosis, coronary heart disease, Scimitar syndrome. Numerous diseases suitable for artificial blood vessel replacement popped up in Xu Qiu's mind. At this moment, a picture suddenly flashed through Xu Qiu's mind. Xu Qiu suddenly put down the equipment, his expression a little solemn. Just now, he thought of Miao Yu, who had checked in the obstetrics and gynecology department in the evening. Before leaving, the other party's pleading eyes lingered in Xu Qiu's mind. Wait, why do you suddenly think of her? Xu Qiu carefully recalled everything just now. There must be something related to Miao Yu, but he ignored it. Is it a disease? Xu Qiu recalled the weirdness of Miao Yu's condition. 1. Is an uncontrollable lung infection and rapidly worsening congestive heart failure. He seemed to be back in the ward, with the weak Miao Yu lying in front of him, difficulty breathing, cyanosis of the lips. At this moment, Xu Qiu's eyes lit up. Everyone has overlooked one point, the most important point. Short and small. A disease quickly popped up in Xu Qiu's mind. It's Scimitar syndrome. This is a rare congenital disease, scientific name, pulmonary hypoplasia syndrome. It is a type of malformed pulmonary vein drainage. It is more common in women aged 20 to 30 years old. Characteristically, the pulmonary veins are connected to the right atrium either directly or through systemic venous pathways, due to diversion. Patients are often accompanied by hypoplasia of the right lung and right displacement of the heart. The typical imaging manifestation is that from the posterior chest X-ray, a curved vascular shadow can be seen on the right side of the heart, downward and inward toward the transverse septum. This is abnormal visualization of the draining right pulmonary veins, shaped like a scimitar, hence it is called Scimitar syndrome. Miao Yu's right lung has shrunk, so it may not be atelectasis. Xu Qiu realized this immediately. Maybe it's Scimitar syndrome. And, if it was this disease, many of Miao Yu's symptoms could be explained. First, height that is ignored by everyone. Scimitar syndrome has a relatively rare manifestation, which is growth retardation and short stature. Secondly, recurrent lung infections, difficulty breathing, wheezing, fatigue, etc. can all be seen in this disease. This also explains why her lung infection lingered. Another point is congestive heart failure. It's not pregnancy that causes heart failure, it's Scimitar syndrome. So, after terminating the pregnancy, Miao Yu's heart failure still did not alleviate, but continued to worsen. All explained. The ectopically connected pulmonary veins drain the right atrium through the inferior vena cava. Left to right shunt leads to increased pulmonary blood and pulmonary hypertension. This in turn causes an increase in the burden on the right heart, a decrease in systemic blood oxygen saturation, etc. This is the real cause of heart failure. It's past 6 o'clock, and the morning light is shining. When the nurses in the emergency department saw Xu Qiu walking out of the operating room, they all said hello. Dr. Su, are you back? It's so hard. I practiced surgery all night. I've seen the duty schedule. Dr. Xu should have a rest today, right? Go back and have a good sleep. Xu Qiu walked toward the door and said, I'm going to the obstetrics and gynecology department. Hey, doesn't Dr. Xu take a rest? Let's go see Director Kong. I heard my colleagues from the obstetrics and gynecology department say, Director Kong was able to move his limbs 2 hours after the operation. He was fully awake at about 1 o'clock last night, and all the values were surprisingly good. The nurses have seen the world. No matter how awesome the doctor is, they have to take care of him after the operation, but in so many years of post-operative care, they have never seen someone recover so quickly after just having a heart repair. As the saying goes, an expert knows the way. In the eyes of professionals, doctors can judge the skill of the surgeon based on the surgical technique, the location, depth and smoothness of the incision, but that's just the surface after all. The most important point may not be expected by anyone. Chapter 59. It doesn't matter, I will perform this operation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Because the level of a doctor's surgical skills depends partly on the performance during the operation, but, more importantly, the prognosis. Doctors can only see the former. They can see smooth knife techniques and graceful movements, but they can't see that this knife cut 1 millimeter more, and that knife deviated 0.1 millimeters, and these tiny details are often reflected in a patient's recovery after surgery. And this is where the level of surgery is truly reflected. The doctor on the stage can only see the elegant techniques and delicate operations of the main surgeon on the surface. Only nurses can more deeply appreciate how well a doctor's surgery is done. It's like washing clothes in a dim room. The fragmented lesions are like stains, hidden in every corner. Even the main surgeon may not be able to find it. Most doctors will scrub hard, and after washing everything, it will be basically clean. However, Xu Qiu seemed to be wearing a flashlight, and he hit accurately, like a cheat. Thinking of this, the nurses in the emergency department suddenly turned their eyes to the door. At this moment, Xu Qiu's back as he left against the sun looked even more majestic. Come to the obstetrics and gynecology department. Xu Qiu first followed Li Shui to visit Kong Huixia in the intensive care unit. Through the glass window, Kong Huixia was wearing a ventilator and looked weak, but when she saw Xu Qiu, her expression immediately became excited, and her eyes were full of gratitude. On the side, a middle-aged man walked over quickly and held Xu Qiu's hand tightly. Are you Xu Qiu? I am Kong Huixia's husband. Thank you for saving my wife. There was also a boy of 16 or 17 following behind. The boy also bowed deeply to Xu Qiu and said, thank you for saving my mother. Xu Qiu smiled and nodded. What the doctor wants to see most is the scene of the family members' hope for life rekindled on their faces after the patient is out of danger. How long will it take to be transferred to the general ward? Xu Qiu asked. Director Jiang of the ICU said excitedly, Director Kong's recovery speed is unexpected. He can be offline and extubated tonight and transferred to the general ward tomorrow morning. Xu Qiu said lightly, it's still a little slow. All the doctors present were stunned. Huh? What's wrong with your slightly regretful tone? Offline and extubation within 24 hours, this is already an incredible recovery speed. I actually think that my surgery is not good enough. This may be the world of geniuses. Someone sighed silently, and felt more and more that he was here to make up the numbers. Dr. Xu, you said Mtlno has Scimitar syndrome? After returning to the obstetrics and gynecology department, Xu Qiu mentioned last night's speculation, which shocked Li Shui directly. She quickly retrieved the case. 5 minutes later, Li Shui's face was filled with surprise, and she said, according to what you said, if Mtlno has meniscus syndrome, it can really explain all kinds of symptoms. But she frowned again. But, the image is not typical enough. For meniscus syndrome, the heart will generally be obviously displaced to the right, and the cardiac dullness will be enlarged. It is not easy to see on chest X-rays and CT scans. Xu Qiu said, it is not necessarily right-sided. A cardiac catheterization and angiography can confirm the diagnosis if there are ectopic blood vessels. He added, have you contacted the patient's family? Li Shui touched her chin and said, I talked to Mtlno last night, and she gave me the phone number of her adoptive parents. I have contacted the family, and they should be able to rush over today. After saying that, her expression seemed a little embarrassed. Xu Qiu saw that the other party was hesitant to speak, and asked, "Any other questions?" Li Shui hesitated and said, "I am considering whether it is a good thing for the patient and her family after the diagnosis is confirmed." "Why do you say that?" "You know Miao Yu's situation. She is almost like a dying tree. After the diagnosis, only one operation can save her life, but her condition almost does not allow surgery. This kind of pain may be more difficult to endure than having no medicine to cure it." Xu Qiu nodded, "That makes sense." He looked at his watch and said, "Today is Sunday, I'm going to go back and rest." Li Shui smiled bitterly and nodded, and sent Xu Qiu to the door, but she couldn't help feeling a little regretful, as expected. Dr. Su is also a human being, and it's impossible for him to perform all surgeries. Just when Xu Qiu stepped half a step out of the office, a plain voice came, saying, "It doesn't matter, I will be the main surgeon for this operation." Li Shui raised her head suddenly, and a pair of beautiful eyes flashed on her jade-like face. After get off work, Xu Qiu first found a bank and withdrew 10,000 yuan before rushing home. "Sister Bai, are you at home? I'll pay the rent." Xu Qiu called the landlord downstairs of the apartment. There was a fierce sound of mouse and keyboard from Bai Shi's side. After a while, a mature and moving female voice came, "Hey, did you get paid?" "Yes." Bai Shi threw down the mouse and shouted to his teammates, "Your father is offline, don't scold him." A few minutes later, a lazy woman with red lips and willow eyebrows came. She was wearing a loose t-shirt, a pair of slippers on her narrow feet, her hair was casually scattered, and she was yawning. "You only have a few dollars, and you are so anxious to pay the rent. Is it enough for living expenses?" Bai Shi leaned against the wall and stretched. "That's enough. Thank you for giving me 3 months." Xu Qiu took out 10,000 and handed it to Bai Shi. The latter was a little surprised and said, "Where do you get so much money?" Xu Qiu, "Salary. Don't let other rich women get away with it. No, don't go astray. With your looks, what can't you do?" Bai Shi was a little angry. Xu Qiu said, "I'm a doctor. How is that possible? You've been looking for a job for so long, and no hospital wants you. Besides, I also have a girlfriend in the hospital. A doctor who just entered the hospital only makes a few dollars a month, 5 or 6,000. 7 or 8,000. Xu Qiu saw that he couldn't explain it clearly, and his white coat, badge, etc. were also left in the emergency department, so he took out his mobile phone and showed Bai Shi the interface of the salary. When he saw that the remitter was Linhai First Hospital and the salary income of more than 40,000 yuan behind it, Bai Shi covered his mouth in surprise and said, 40,000 is quite a lot. How did you get it? This question couldn't be explained for a while, Bai Shi said sympathetically. Then let's go to your house and sit down and talk slowly. Xu Qiu wanted to refuse. His house, ordinary people would probably be scared to death if they went in. Bai Shi interrupted Xu Qiu in advance and said half jokingly and half threateningly, "You call me Sister Bai, and I will treat you as my brother. Sister doesn't even play games and comes to see you, but you don't even invite me upstairs for a cup of tea." Xu Qiu, what hero did you choose? Kai Wenji. After Bai Shi finished speaking, she immediately reacted and shook her head vigorously and said, "Is this the point? Come on, lead the way for sister." After that, she pushed the wall with her back, bounced up from the top, turned around and walked into the elevator. The next moment, she screamed. Warm tips: if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us. We will handle it as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding. Chapter 60, Surgery at Home, The Terrified Landlady. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Xu Qiu quickly turned his head to look, and then his pupils shrank. I saw that Bai Shi's originally smooth face, the blood was flowing profusely at this moment. A deep vertical and horizontal wound appeared on her right cheek, about a centimeter below the cheekbone. Xu Qiu took a closer look. There is a wooden ladder at the corner of the wall, with a nail protruding from it. Be careful. Xu Qiu shouted subconsciously, fairness is a bit broken, isn't it too late for you to shout caution? She pressed her face and said tremblingly, quickly, take me to the hospital, I'm about to faint. Xu Qiu hesitated, it takes at least half an hour's drive from here to the hospital. By the time they arrived, the wounds were already messy and contaminated by Bai Shi's hands. After some ideological struggle, Xu Qiu said, go to my house. Bai Shi? Brother, if my sister doesn't play with this now, my face will be ruined. Xu Qiu said calmly, the nearest one is Linhai No. 1 hospital. When you go there, I will take care of it for you. Follow me upstairs. I have medicine there. Bai Shi was confused, in addition, his head was getting more and more dizzy. When he came back to his senses, he was already sitting on the sofa in Xu Qiu's apartment. She quickly took a look, and the next moment, she was so shocked that she forgot about the pain. There is no extra furniture in Xu Qiu's house. Against the wall, there was a long table 6 to 7 meters long, filled with rows of surgical instruments that shone coldly. On the walls are various anatomy diagrams. Not far away, there are human skeleton models scattered everywhere. I don't know when. Xu Qiu had already changed into a brand new white coat, wearing sterile gloves, a pen in her left hand, and a knife in her right hand, and walked slowly over. Bai Shi's pupils dilated, thinking of scenes in horror movies, and he was so frightened that he screamed. Xu Qiu said in confusion, Sister Bai, you can either lie down on the table or sit next to the table, and I will help you handle it. Bai Shi then remembered what he was here for, and said with a pale face, can I lie down on the sofa? Also, for injuries caused by cutting the soft tissue of the maxillofacial region, the principle of asepsis is not so strict. Besides, the current situation cannot provide a sterile environment. Just the sofa. Xu Qiu turned back to the long table and moved various instruments and medicines to the sofa. After doing this, he changed into another pair of sterile gloves. Taking this opportunity, Bai Shi quickly turned on his phone to take a selfie, hoping to see the condition of the wound. However, with just one glance, Bai Shi felt that the sky was about to fall. There was a wound at least 3 centimeters long and bone deep under her cheekbone. Moreover, large areas of flesh and blood were turned out. This doesn't look like the face of a beautiful girl, it's almost like the scars on the neck of a dead pig wiped out by a knife. Dead, I'm going to die, woo woo woo. Bai Shi's almond-shaped eyes slowly became aggrieved, and tears were about to burst out. Xu Qiu saw it and suggested, you can cry in the left eye, but don't cry in the right eye. It will contaminate the wound. Bai Shi? While Bai Shi was sad, Xu Qiu had already prepared the anesthetic. Bear with it, it hurts a little. Bai Shi panicked again when she saw the needle. I'm most afraid of needles. Xu Qiu said calmly, Sister Bai, you don't want to disfigure yourself, right? After hearing these words, Bai Shi became honest instantly. Xu Qiu then injected a circle around the wound to complete local anesthesia, waiting time for the anesthetic to take effect. Xu Qiu picked up the pen, pointed it at Bai Shi's face, and began to design a suture plan. In other places, skin suturing is not so particular. For example, circumcising little Gigi, no one expects perfect sewing. Even, there are also some people who will specifically tell the doctor that if they want to leave a little scar here, it is best to sew it up to make it uneven. But the face is different. Facial sutures are more classified as cosmetic plastic surgery than medical surgery, therefore. The suturing here particularly tests the artist's imagination and ability. Not long after, Xu Qiu already has a mature suture plan in mind, perfectly conforms to skin lines and fits the physiological folds of the cheekbones, and ensure that the long axis of the suture and the elastic fiber are consistent. It is consistent with the shape of blood vessels and nerves, etc. Xu Qiu quickly completed the marking, and before starting to debridement, he paused and asked, is there any drug allergy? Bai Shi quickly said, no. Then use gentamicin. Xu Qiu picked out one of the medicine bottles and rinsed the wound repeatedly with gentamicin saline. At the same time, used the knife to peel away the dead flesh. After a while, the flesh and blood fragments and blood were washed away, and the surgical field was much clearer. Xu Qiu glanced at it and said, the superior labial artery is damaged, as well as the subcutaneous fat, superficial temporal fascia and fat pad. I think the superficial temporal artery is also severed. There are also branches of the facial nerve here. Bai Shi cried sadly, stop talking, I'm afraid. Xu Qiu nodded calmly. He carefully marked various blood vessels and nerves, then he came closer and began to sew. Without a microscope, he had to use this method. Bai Shi was in pain and scared at this time, but as the body temperature of Xu Qiu passed over, she suddenly became quiet. Do not talk. Bai Shi closed her mouth, her almond eyes widened, and she looked at Xu Qiu who was close to her seriously. At this moment, her heart was pounding. More than 20 minutes later, Xu Qiu sutured layer by layer according to the anatomical layers of facial tissue. The operation was successful. When he was about to cover the sterile dressing, Bai Shi stopped him. Can I take a look? She said nervously. Xu Qiu nodded. Bai Shi quickly called up her mobile phone to take a selfie. The next moment, there was a hint of disbelief in her eyes. She didn't understand medicine, and couldn't see that there was no tension, hematoma, or dead space at the suture, but she could still observe that this suture was neatly aligned, almost the same as before the injury. Many of Bai Shi's girlfriends had plastic surgery. These people in the circle are not short of money, and they all hired top plastic surgeons, even those experts who are good at cosmetic sutures. The results of the sutures are not half as good as Xu Qiu's. At this moment, Bai Shi was shocked and speechless. However, the more she stared at the wound, the more she felt something was wrong, but she couldn't find the problem, so she realized that it was probably because the stitches were so beautiful that it was a little unreal. After a few words of emotion, Bai Shi looked at her face with satisfaction, and said with sudden enlightenment, Sister knows why you have a monthly salary of more than 40,000. After the operation, Xu Qiu packed up the instruments, took out the mop, and mopped all the blood on the floor. Bai Shi then discovered that the sofa had been wet by the salt water that flowed from the previous rinse. She said embarrassedly, I'm sorry, Sister will help you change a set of sofas in 2 days. Xu Qiu said it didn't matter. After mopping the floor, he added, go to the hospital to get some medicine to prevent infection and promote scar repair. What medicine do you want to prescribe? The doctor will tell you. You are the doctor. Bai Shi completely changed her words at this time, and her trust in Xu Qiu soared to the extreme. Xu Qiu thought for a moment and said, take some amoxicillin or cephalexin. For external use, use polysulfonated mucopolysaccharide cream. Of course, you can buy some imported scar removal products yourself, and the effect may be better. This is a gap, we have to admit it. Xu Qiu has some aspirations. Perhaps, after a few decades, he will really make a name for himself and can lead the domestic medical community to break many foreign technical barriers. Xu Qiu smiled. He looked back and found that Bai Shi had opened the sterile dressing again and took a photo with her mobile phone. The latter was like a child who was found to have made a mistake, and said with a guilty conscience, Sister will take a photo and send it to her bestie, so that she won't expose it randomly later. Xu Qiu did not comment. Bai Shi was relieved and happily shared the picture with her bestie, and boasted, how is this wound sewn? Isn't it super beautiful? It's the work of my treasured brother. Before she could be happy, the word sent by several besties made Bai Shi's face change, and she immediately remembered what was wrong.